The title of the talk is Anar has always been Anār, the coinage of a town in Kirman. Here's a map showing the terrain. On the coinage of Kirman 677 to 704, those dates could be shaded a bit. There are various characteristics in that period, starting in 677. We have coins that have, in addition to the one or two or three or four letter abbreviation of the mint city, the name Kirman, Klman, which is actually just a philological kind of crotchet. The inscription could equally be read Krman, which is how I'm going to read it. The same letter was used for L or R. The first use of the mint name then, Kirman, was in 56. And you can read it there. I don't need to rehearse it, I think. The coins go up to 84, but I believe there's only one issue dated 84. They go up to 83, and there's a gap. We'll come back to it. The beginning of the coinage with Kirman in 56 is placed in some doubt, I think. We only have two coins, one of which I had already relegated away as a kind of a freak. There are what we call funny-looking coins, which are odd coins that seem to be produced either by mint accident or they're perhaps, well, they have different explanations. I had already taken it out of my corpus when another one turned up. So now I don't know what to think, but they skip a year, and that's one reason to think that that first year may be fake. There are no coins of 57. These are Hijra dates. And the next issue is dated 58. The last is 84. This is one of the first coins that has the mint name Kirman. We have coins with Kirman written on them. Kirman is written, as Stuart pointed out, over to the far right on the reverse. And that's the name of the province, not explained. I differ with him in his attribution of the place where that mint, this provincial central mint, was located. I think it was in Bardasir, and we'll come to his reasons why. These are the mint abbreviations of Kirman that are left after I went through it. There were, at one point, I think 30 or 40 listed, but there are many of them just variations of one. Terribly confused. And this up until recent years. Some of the work of weeding out the errors and misreadings have been done, and Stuart has done some without me knowing about it. But I came up with the list shown on there, which I regard as canonical. We have Kirman, which is the name of the province. Anār, which is the new name that is the subject of my talk. We have BN, which I regard as bomb. And I remember somewhere reading there was an explanation of the use of the letters BN to represent a mint that has only the two letters in Arabic, BM, but I can't remember how to explain that. GY and now G, they seem to be two different places, but closely associated. Now GRI is Jerut, of course. That's one we all agree on. Now G means new Jerut. And I think perhaps some people have suggested, not just me, it might well be something on the order of a new fortification that was built adjacent to the old Jerut. HPYC, which is Hadis, Nar, Monsieur, PYL, which was a mint, I'll come to explain it later, but only appeared for 3 years. And finally, SLR, which is written SR. L and R are the same letter. There are three, there may be more that I've forgotten, but I think there are three mints that we haven't identified yet. Anāt, no idea what corresponds to that name. Anāt. Anbir, which is a really nice name, but again, I don't think we have an identification for that. Anwat, which could be the same as Anāt. N and W are the same letter in this Pahlavi alphabet. And R is also that letter, by the way, so that's three. And since L and R can often be used interchangeably, that's four letters represented by the same vertical stroke, like our pronoun I, capital I. That's all it is. So we have to sort of guess in names like Anwat. Is it Anwat or Anāt with two N's, N written twice? It probably is the same mint as the four-letter version. And GLM But I had a flash of insight tonight and can contribute to that too. Stuart and I certainly need to work together on that one. GLM means actually GRM, GARM. To identify these mints, the mint Kirman, and this is almost absolutely certain, is in fact Bardasir, which is the city in the center of the country that was based on a foundation by Ardashir I, the Sasanian, called Ve Ardashir. And these names that are given to cities, like Medinat as-Salam, for example, later on, that is to say, the city that is located on Baghdad, Al-Madinat al-Qahira, Cairo, founded by the Fatimids at the north end of a string of settlements. These were Medinas. These were built edifices. Today, the word Medina means simply city. It is absolutely synonymous with city, ciudad, Stadt in all languages. But before the 20th century, or at least up until fairly recent times, Medina had a very specific meaning, which was not city. A Medina was a built edifice in which people lived. It was a wall. In fact, the wall itself was the Medina. It was something you could go up and lean against. That's why Fustat, Basra, Kufa, Wasit were not Medinas. They didn't have a wall. So when we're speaking now of, in many cases, of this Ve Ardashir Bardashir, then Ve Ardashir was a walled fortification. It would have been called a Medina. It didn't have that particular label, but it doesn't have to have the label to be a Medina. And those are the kind of places that get fancy names. Medina as-Salam, the Medina of Peace. You know, it's not just plain old Baghdad, which was just a big village with a town in it. That Ardashir was smoothed over the generations from the 3rd century up until the 7th and 8th and on into Bardasir, the one and the same thing. And they're located at the location which is often called Kirman. Even today, the city of Kirman is located there. The city of Kirman in the province of Kirman is located on the site of Bardasir, the old capital, founded originally by Ardashir the Sasanian. I am convinced, but beyond any doubt, and I read an explanation for it, that BN is Bam, but we won't go into that. GY is absolutely Jeruf. Everybody agrees on that. Nar is for Narmasir or Narmashir. Another thing that's peculiar is how the S's become shuz, isn't it? You did that too. Shirajan, you had Sirajan and Sirajan, and I don't know exactly what is going on there. But it is a very common phenomenon in Kirman province and also elsewhere. Underneath this is SR, which could also be SL, but in any case, it stands for Sirjan, which is later considered to be the great, or said to be the greatest city of the province, and possibly was its capital later on. But to say that it was the capital at any time is not quite that certain. They alternated. Now then we have at the bottom of it the new names. Anār is one new name. Kabis is another name. So we have in Kirman 5 districts. Kirman district, Bardasir is its seat, its capital. Abam district, Jeruf district, Kabis district, Narmashir, Narmasir, and Sirjan. I didn't do anything at all. I haven't looked at the situation of the province under the Sasanians. The very earliest Kirman coins are dated 26 of the Yazdegerd era, 676, but it's only a few years after the time of the prophet. The reason that the Arabs got there so soon is that, as Stuart mentioned also in another instance, they crossed the Persian Gulf directly rather than going the long way around by land through Iraq. And so Kirman was settled at a very early date. And these coins are mostly from the mint SR, which I think to be Sirjan. The mint name Kirman was not used, not until 58 of the Hijra. The only real good description I know of the first encounter of the Prince Marzban means the governor of Kirman, the Sasanian governor. There is this other mint that is, it seems to read A-N-A-N, but very commonly it's simply A-N. And we have to remember that N and R and W are all the same letter. So AN could be anything. When I got out a marvelous thing published by the Wikipedia people, all the city names in Kirman. It must be a couple of hundred of them. And in other Iranian provinces too, a sheet. One of the first names that popped out was Anār. And I think it is the place. And in fact, it's a respectable place. It has a castle, not to be sneered at. Although it was rebuilt in the Safavid period, is said to partly date back to the Sassanids. Now, what happened to poor Anār, which nobody had ever heard of? It has a population of about 16,000 people. It's not even the capital of a district. Nobody in Europe in the 19th century had ever heard of this place, and there was no guide, no listing of all the Iranian cities that would be useful, or perhaps there was one and he hadn't seen it. Dehuya, the great impeccable Dehuya, had one manuscript with what looked to him like the letter B. The letter N and the letter B are the same in Arabic, except that one, if they have the dots written as they should have, one has the dot above it, that's an N, and one has the dot below it, that's a B. Lots of times in manuscripts, they just skim through the dots. We don't need those dots anyway. But he read it as Aban, even though he had one manuscript with what he thought was Aban. And he described it as being, peculiar, but I believe that's what it is. And two manuscripts that had clearly Anār. Dehuya chose Aban, what he thought was the reading. And he used that in this magnificent 8-volume set of Bibliotheca Geographorum Arabicorum, which is a compilation, separate volumes for all the great Arabic geographies that list all the cities of the Islamic world and some others and tell you all about them. In printing those volumes, wherever he read into the name Anār, he put in Aban because he corrected it already. And that was followed by most scholars for a while. I don't know exactly how the tune shifted, but 1937, there is a major geographical work on the Arab geographers, which has Anār and no comment about it. And up to then, some authors used Aban and some authors used Anār for this. And in no place does anybody seem to have set forth the reasons why that is wrong. But it is wrong. Now, we have the same text he had, and he only had one single example that he thought might be, you see, have the dot in a different place. Nobody wanted to come out and say to who you was talking through his hat, I guess is a polite term. And so it never got explicitly corrected. Now, Lestrange, another of the great names in our field, got the idea that that was the earliest name because there are plenty of manuscripts that show it to be Anār. So Lestrange stated that it was the first name, that the town started out being named Aban, but then its name was changed to Anār. That's why I say that Anār was always Anār, because none of that is true. Just exactly why these two great scholars were so careless, I couldn't tell you. But in any case, I strongly believe in my heart of hearts that Anār was always Anār. The earliest issue there in the year 20, that was the year that Yazdagerd III died, Hijra, except that it's probably not really the Hijra date. It could be with this governor's name on it. This comes from Nal, which is the first syllable of Narmashir, one of the 5 provincial capitals. Here is a later coin where we have AN to spell out Anār. Here's another one. I just wanted to show a few examples of this. This one has the mint name Naugi. It's much more clearly struck. Okay, literally last night, I wrote this morning. I suddenly had an idea, and this is one place where Stuart and I have sort of coincided, that a way to explain the name Garm Kirman. Now, it means warm Kirman. There's no question about that. The whole northern coast of the Persian Gulf is called the Garmsir, or hot zone. It's not a governmental, political, administrative unit. It's just the hottest desert in the world, probably, in places. And then the other part north of it is the Sardsir, or cool country. So the Garmsir certainly has something to do with that. And here we come to Bandar Hormuz. Like Stefan, I think Bandar Hormuz needs some coins attributed to it, maybe. That name only existed for about 1,000 years. Before that, it must have had other names, and I don't know the full history, and I haven't found it in doing a lot of research on Kirman cities. It certainly could have been a port in the 1,000 years before that, the first millennium of the Common Era, and perhaps it might have had a mint, and that place might well have been Hormuz, which otherwise had no city in it, or you don't find it on the early maps of Kirman. This is the coin that Stuart also showed us, another coin from Garm Kirman with this strange and unparalleled inscription. I wouldn't want to try to pronounce it, really. Here's the best map I could come up with of the mint cities of Kirman. I have not been able to find good maps of Kirman of any kind that show the cities well. But this one, largely made by me, I copied off somebody's map and added names to it. So you can see where many of these places are. So then here we are. Garmsir, well, it certainly is warm. The temperature gets up to 135 during the summer. That place, as a port, rather, might well have had a mint and produced coins. And I wonder whether, but we need a linguist to tell us how wrong I am, whether the word Garm and the syllable Herm in Hormuz might be somehow philologically related, but I'll leave that.